Dr. Dave Janda, welcome back to our combined series of Dave versus the MSM and Operation Freedom briefings. I'd like to thank you for joining me today and thank you for networking this information to all those you know and love. We are available 24/7 with extra shows, content, guests, analysis, archives to all of our shows at davejanda.com. Content you're not going to get from any other source, and the reason is because the information I provide is based on the contacts I've developed over the past 38 years after I first went to D.C. back in the late 80s at the behest of the Reagan administration to work on healthcare policy. And over the years, I have developed contacts, sources from behind the curtain that are freedom fighters fighting for each and every American's freedom on a daily basis against that syndicate that's also based behind the curtain, that's known as the globalist syndicate, the globalist cult, the New World Order crowd, the criminal international banking syndicate, the shadow government, the deep state. Yeah, they exist. Big time. Unfortunately, there are many more of them than there are freedom fighters behind the curtain. But we bring that information forward. And they trust me because of their friendship with me over all the years, those freedom fighters. And that's what I bring to you. And there are certain issues and depth of issues I cannot discuss on social media platforms because of the deep state choke points still present within each and every social media platform. And I can't, and even though I do my weekly radio show and Wham Talk 1600 is the best station in the country, and there is no general manager telling you what you can and can't speak about. However, there is the FCC that would pull Wham's license on if I touch on certain issues or certain depth of issues, which is why davejanda.com exists. I do another 3 to 4 to 5 video format shows every week on that platform. Plus, we have our radio show you can stream live on Sundays from 2 to 4. And it's very easy. It's free. Just hit the listen live button at davejanda.com on Sundays 2 to 4. You want the podcast? It's part of our subscription service, as are the 4 to 5 other video format shows. I hope you'll join us. Today I want to talk about and dissect an issue that has been called the greatest scandal of our lifetimes. I'll let you be the judge of that. Now, I started my radio show in 2010. And starting back in 2010, I started speaking about these issues as it relates to, well, there's one political party called the Republicrats, as I called it, owned and operated by a criminal syndicate. That was based on my experience dating back to 1988. I also spoke about how when I first got there, I was told by a well-known political figure that 95% of folks in D.C., at all levels, of all branches of government, including their staffs, 95% were compromised, controlled, leveraged, bribed, blackmailed. If that person was alive today, that well-known political figure that told me that, I think that person would tell me it's probably right now about 99.9%. And one of the issues I got into many years ago, and was demonized for doing so, was speaking about this cat Epstein and his network. And the fact that Epstein was a front. The real brains of that outfit, as I've told folks based on my sourcing, was actually Ghislaine Maxwell. Maxwell. Oh no, she was his little assistant. No, she was the brains, and she didn't fall far from her daddy's tree, Robert Maxwell, who was a notorious scum, owned and operated by the intelligence agencies, CIA, Mossad, British MI6. His little daughter didn't fall far from that tree. And in fact, was the brains of the outfit on this leverage and blackmail operation run by these intelligence agencies so that they could leverage political and business figures and media figures worldwide. Oh, I took so much heat for speaking about that early on, many years ago. And I spoke about it being a scandal. But that Maxwell Epstein operation, that silo, is one of many. One of many. And the common denominator of all those silos that are working those leverage operations, they're satanic, they're evil, and their ultimate goal is more power, more control, more financial resources, and stripping freedom of liberty of not just every American, but every person of the world. And if that sounds sinister, oh yeah, it's beyond sinister. Know your enemy. Our enemy. They're psychopaths. And they will stop at nothing. And if people right now in early 2026 are having a hard time getting around some of this information that's seeping out, albeit too slowly, and more on that in a minute, from the Epstein files, wait till the real stuff hits. I mean, the really deep satanic stuff. That's something I can't talk about on social media. But at the heart of this are these intelligence agencies. Patrick Riley, a IT analyst, in reviewing the Epstein files, the 3 million pages that were released at the end of January of 2026. The public is impossibly naive about the realities of our intelligence agencies and their current state of technological capabilities. They still haven't even grasped what Epstein was doing, much less what was possible. You have a hint of what Epstein was doing, and Maxwell, and their handlers. But remember, the intelligence agencies are a tentacle of the global syndicate. You see, the real head of this syndicate, it's like an octopus, are the banking cartels, the banking conglomerates, international. And who runs them are the banking families. Names? Sure. I do it all the time. I get constant blowback when I do it. So let's do it. The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, Lazards, the Pinkuses, the Warburgs, the Seifs, the Loebs, and the very top of that psychopathic pyramid, the Payseur, Payseur family. The process of these Epstein files being released has been slow. That's an understatement. Why? Because of the number of people that are, and entities that are leveraged in this, controlled through their release. And unfortunately, there are a number of people around President Trump who are not just in the Epstein files, but are actively trying to suppress all of the files seeing the light of the day, including the videos and the pictures and the like. Emerald Robinson said it, great investigative reporter, independent. Trump is making the same mistakes in the second administration that he made in the first. He turned his first administration over to his liberal globalist son-in-law to run the show. Yeah, true. Mm-hmm. 2, he has turned his second administration over to Susie Wiles, and might I add, Howard Lutnick, to run the show. Not good. No, because both are card-carrying globalists. They're just two of a number of the globalist players around him. But these files can put a big dent in the globalist operations of stripping freedom and liberty from every American, every person of the world, which is why the accountability and transparency are so very important. Elon Musk said it. I have issues with Musk, right? My original account is still thrown off Twitter for linking this with the fraud in November of 2020, right? But here he's on target about the release of the Epstein files. Quote, "What matters is not release of some subset of the Epstein files, but rather the prosecution of those who committed heinous crimes with Epstein. When there is at least one arrest, some justice will have been done. If not, this is all performative and nothing but a distraction. That's a concern. Emerald Robinson, no one has gone through all 300 million pages, or 3 million pages and documents yet. But a number of us have gone through a fair number of them. Emerald had a really concise review of the findings and some of the most prominent findings in that release. Here are her most important items that she took away. 1, Epstein was deeply involved in the initial development and progression and funding of cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin. More on that in a second. Epstein confirms that Ghislaine's father, Robert, remember what I told you about him, worked for Mossad. He also worked for the CIA and also worked for British MI6. And apparently he crossed paths, kind of double dealt the Russians. All of a sudden, one day, Robert was found floating in the Mediterranean near his boat. He fell off. Imagine that. Fell off. Yeah, slipped on a banana peel or something. Emerald, a former Epstein employee, claims 2 girls were buried on the New Mexico property. What was that? Zorro Ranch of Epstein's. After being strangled to death during a sexual assault. Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick took his family and young children to Epstein Island in 2012. Some people think you're pushing the envelope if you take your kids to Disney World. Not Howard. He's going to go the next step. He took him to Epstein Island. Epstein was in regular contact with top CIA officials from the Biden regime like Kathy Rumler and William Burns. Kathy Rumler, she's an interesting character. That's not being fair to characters. Scum. That's more like it. It's not fair to pond scum, but we'll go on. Rumler was the White House counsel, the longest serving White House counsel for Barack Obama. Oh, yeah. She was in charge of vetting all the cabinet officials. Rumler used to call Jeffrey Epstein Uncle Jeffrey. He gave her gifts. In fact, Rumler, when he got arrested in 2019 and he was arraigned, she was in the courtroom in the front row. After she left Obama's employ, she was the general counsel for that company on Wall Street that does, what did their CEO once say? We do God's work? Yeah, God's work, all right. Different kind of God than the rest of us have. His God might be Satanist for all I know. Goldman Sachs. Yeah. Epstein wanted to pay for experiments under gender transition of infants and children using hormones. I'm telling you. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Epstein told people that he was a representative of what? Oh, that wonderful banking family, the Rothschilds. Yeah. The chaos creators, right? Epstein talked about torture and torture videos in several emails, one of which is somebody who runs a huge conglomerate in the Middle East. The guy recently resigned because of that revelation that came out. Epstein was discussing on how to profit from vaccines in 2011 and how to profit from pandemics in 2017 in emails with that piece of dirt. That's not fair to dirt, but whatever. Bill Gates, when he wasn't giving STDs to his wife from Russian hookers. He, as Emerald points out, was deeply involved with the deep state and with the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations and Rockefeller University. All of them are fronts for a syndicate that's focused on stripping you and everyone you know of their freedoms and liberties. Emerald concluded that when you look at all this, it's a satanic pedophile gang that's trying to rule the world, working with a number of countries and working with the intelligence agencies. And when it comes down to it, the United States government is trying to protect the satanic pedophile ring for reasons that they give of national security. This, in fact, she states, and I think she has a point, is the darkest moment in our history. We got some dark moments. We got some great moments, but we also got some dark ones, right? Like in November of 1963. That was pretty dark. Or when they took out Bobby and Martin Luther King. Dark. When they caused and were involved in financial crashes. Dark. But this, I agree with Emerald. So, the Do-Nothing Department of Justice, led by Pam Bondi, and let's be clear, the person who's actually running the Department of Justice is the number 2 person, Todd Blanche, who was put there by globalist chief of staff, Susie Wiles. And that's another issue of why she is still there with all the garbage she has pulled. Blanche is there because of Susie Wiles, also another henchman around Trump, Boris Epstein, as I understand it. This Blanche character is tight with Obama's and Clinton's and Biden. Donated to him, advised him, but he's number 2 at the Justice Department. And many people believe that he is the rate-limiting step because he controls the shots. And that's not giving a pass to Bondi. She's obviously complicit in all this as well. As is Patel, and as was Bongino before that guy slithered away. Do nothing, slither away. And now he wants you to believe that, yeah, he's fighting for all of us. Oh, yeah. Right. Get out of here. Con. So, Pam Bondi. And by the way, does this Department of Justice in 2026 remind you of the Department of Justice with Jeff Sessions? Oh, we're going to get to the bottom of the Russian... Nothing. Or Bill Barr? Who... Well, we got do-nothing Pam there. And that's what she was put there to do by the globalists. Remember, the people who were the transition chiefs for Trump were Susie Wiles and Howard Lutnick. Globalists. They also ran his campaign. Globalists. Howard Lutnick, big donor to Obama and Biden and Clinton's. Ran that firm Cantor Fitzgerald that was tied up in some really questionable stuff, supposedly, around September 11th, 2001. Luckily for him, it was the one day he took his kids to school. That's why he wasn't there when the offices that he inhabited in the World Trade Center, why he survived, and hundreds of his employees died. And now there's questions about whatever happened with some of that insurance issues, and it's bad. But he's still around Trump. As Secretary of Commerce. Yeah, he was the Sven Gulli that kind of changed the rules at the last minute on that. Remember Liberation Day, April 2nd, 2025? And that goat rodeo that occurred when all of a sudden something different. It wasn't based on reciprocal tariffs like it was supposedly with this chart Lutnick handed President Trump. It was based on deficit. It just imploded the markets. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't from incompetence. That's what he's put there to do. So Pam Bondi goes in front of Congress regarding a hearing about the Epstein files and the lack of prosecutions. There's no doubt. I mean, We got Ghislaine Maxwell, who, by the way, she's supposedly sitting in jail, but they said they never trafficked any kids. What? Pam Bondi goes on a completely unhinged rant about the stock market when asked why she has not indicted any clients of Jeffrey Epstein. Bondi says all Americans need to focus on other topics like the economy and not on Jeffrey Epstein's child trafficking network. Quote, that's what we should be talking about, end quote. I have played this clip on the radio a number of times where she's asked about why no prosecution. She goes, are you aware that the Dow is at 50,000? Are you aware of the S&P? Are you aware? What? Look, as I mentioned, I've been dealing in D.C. since 88. Okay, I have testified in front of Congress a number of times. I have witnessed other people testifying in front of Congress hundreds of times. I have read transcripts of people testifying in front of Congress thousands of times. I have never seen a more disastrous congressional hearing and testimony than Bondi. It was someone emailed me as it was going on, or texted me, and I was like, she's doing her best impersonation of Richard Pryor lighting himself on fire than anybody I've ever seen. And then, to compound it, President Trump, for 6 years he ran on, we got to get accountability and transparency on these Epstein files. And, I threw him out of Mar-a-Lago in 2006 or whenever it was. And blah, 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 blah. Okay. Well, then all of a sudden, remember a year ago? Oh, forget about it. Let's move on. And then it got worse. It's a hoax. What? Susie Wiles, Howard Lutnick. It's a hoax. That's what you got to tell him. And then, remember, must have been, 11 months ago, he got out there and said, all these supporters of mine that want more disclosure on these files, I don't want your support anymore. Yeah, I don't want you anymore. I don't want to be near you anymore. Goodbye. Where do you come up with that? Now, some people said, well, it's because he's in them. Well, I think if he was in them to a degree as it relates to, he's in it where they're talking about him. And there is talk in the files that Epstein is mad that he thinks Trump was the guy who fingered him, which sounds like Trump had a role in that. So you would think Trump would want that out, right? And some people say, well, he doesn't want it out because, he's protecting family members. He's protecting friends. It could be. He's protecting donors. Yeah, probably. He's been told that if these come out, it will destroy the economy. It'll destroy the government. It'll destroy the private sector. He probably was told that. And he did see what happens when an entity comes along like COVID and destroys the economy based on policy decisions, right? Okay. So, and he is really tuned into his legacy. How am I going to be remembered by historians, by the public, right? Well, legacy. Okay, that's okay. I think every president is. Every person who does anything is of importance, or even non-important issues. You do say, well, how are people going to think about this down the line? Okay. And he doesn't want that anchor of the economy imploding around his neck, or government imploding around his neck because he released the files. Well, here's the thing. If you have a government that's built on Satanism, pedophiles, criminal activity, is that government worthwhile to maintain? Is that something you want? Or is it better to cut the cancer out, find solid bedrock that's based on the rule of law, and build from there? I am a surgeon by trade, have been, now retired, as you know, and I did it for 32 years. I never said to somebody, we're going to take out part of that tumor, because we're afraid that if we take out all the tumor, it'll leave too big a hole. No. And some people say, well, it's because he could have been threatened and that's why he's holding back. Maybe. But he's used to threats. And he not only has a Secret Service, but he has his own private security team around him. So, and family. I think a bit unlikely. And if he was in it to any significant degree as it relates to kids, that would have been released years ago. So what's going on here? Because after that disastrous performance in front of Congress, the next day, President Trump did another one of these, what are you doing? Events. He comes out and he says, Pam Bondi was fantastic in the never-ending saga of Jeffrey Epstein. Quote, AG Pam Bondi under intense fire from the Trump deranged radical left lunatics, and they are lunatics, but hold on. He says, was fantastic. What? On what planet was she fantastic? Oh, maybe the planet of people that set themselves on fire. In the never-ending saga of Jeffrey Epstein. Well, yeah. And it's never ending because people want transparency and accountability. And I've talked to a lot of sources and friends on the inside about this. But what the heck's really going on? What? It comes down to, if Trump is holding back on this stuff, what? Why? Well, and the question you have to answer first is, what really makes him tick? And from a number of different silos, many people in each silo, here is my conclusion. What makes him tick is, number one, his legacy and how he will be seen. Okay. And number two, what makes him tick is money, money, and more money. Now look, he's being told by those around him, Letnick, Wiles, throw in a sprinkle of Radcliffe, Bondi, Blanche, Rubio, Besant. They're saying, look, you don't want your legacy to be that you released this and it pulled down the economy, imploded government. It just let's move on. As opposed to the truth. Man, if you don't come clean on this, because you made this a big thing for 6 years in all your campaigns, 8 years actually in your campaigns, you're going to be seen as the president that's protecting really bad people that abuse kids. But nobody's telling them that. Because the people that would tell them that are not allowed to be near him. Because Wiles, as the chief of staff, has completely blocked access. And as far as the money, it's evident, as Emerald Robinson pointed out in number one, and in going through the documents myself, it's evident that cryptocurrencies, and in particular Bitcoin, are linked at the hip to Epstein, to Maxwell, to the intelligence agencies, to the people around Epstein that had of like satanic minds. And that release of these files is going to harm crypto. President Trump, like it or not, is a rich guy. Okay, fine. But according to some folks I know, they tell me that he and his family have made billions of dollars and will make tens of billions of dollars with crypto being more prevalent in society, having a greater role. And when you look at these files, crypto could well get wiped out, because it's not just Bitcoin, but the IT specialists I know and that have gone through this and analyzed this have informed me, and it's evident when you read, that it's not just Bitcoin that gets it in these files. It's some stable coins like Tether that prop up Bitcoin and many other cryptos. Tether's kind of the the common denominator, the snake that wiggles itself through in all of these. And by the way, who kind of manages Tether? Whose company has a big role in that? Cantor Fitzgerald. Howard Lutnick, whose, I believe, kid is involved in this now. So it's not any mystery why he's in Trump's ear doing this, right? Oh, no, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't release. From Aaron Day, an IT analyst, about this linkage. Look, I'm a big fan of blockchain, but this isn't about blockchain. This is about capture of an innovative IT development, that being cryptos. Capture by intelligence agencies and this Epstein pedophile network at every level. We're going to hold on, because this is really important. You're not going to get this through the bought off lamestream. Aaron Day, imagine waking up and being a Bitcoin authority, and one, discover that Bitcoin was hijacked by Jeffrey Epstein with likely funding ties to the Rothschild family. Two, discover that the process of hijacking Bitcoin and rendering it useless as peer-to-peer digital cash, Epstein and the Rothschilds also funded all 3 U.S. central bank digital currency pilots, which directly benefits central banks and the Rothschild banking interests. In particular, he was talking about Tether, Solana. 3, realize that you have become one of the biggest unwitting supporters of the Rothschild banking dynasty and another foreign state, Israel, a state established with Rothschild involvement. Now, Crypto News Service did an excellent dissection of the Epstein files. Crypto News Service, very, very pro-crypto, this entity. Here's what they concluded. This is critical to understand. Department of Justice documents about the Epstein files reveal about who really built Bitcoin. If you think Bitcoin was built by cypherpunks in their basements, you haven't read the files. The recent dump over 3 million pages from the Department of Justice from January 30th to February 2nd, 2026, did not just reveal names. It revealed an architecture. An architecture of, and here's the operative word, capture, so sophisticated that most people defending Bitcoin don't even realize they're defending the very system they thought they were escaping. Let's be clear about what these documents prove. The decentralized, which everybody talks about, they're decentralized. The decentralized future of money was funded, shaped, and guided by one of the most connected sex offenders in modern history in the exact same legacy power networks that cryptocurrency claimed to disrupt. Not through backdoors, through something far more effective. Infrastructure bottlenecks. Now, this is really, really important. They didn't need a backdoor in the code when they controlled everything around Bitcoin. When people defend Bitcoin against these revelations, they retreat to a single mantra. Quote, the code is open source and it can't be controlled, end quote. This misses the entire point. Nobody needed to corrupt Bitcoin's code. They just needed to control it. Who could, and they controlled it in a number of different ways, of who could access capital to build on it, which project got listed on exchanges, what the media narrative said about it, who regulators went after, which developers got paid, and which academic institutions legitimized it. The Epstein network, along with the intelligence agencies, positioned itself at every single one of these bottlenecks. What this means for you, and why you should care even if you don't own crypto. If you hold Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency, ask yourself, are you holding revolutionary technology that threatens power? Or are you holding an asset that powerful people position themselves to profit from by capturing it at its most vulnerable stage? The pattern is what matters, not just the specific case. Elite networks move to control promising technologies at their earliest, most vulnerable stages. They don't destroy them. They don't ban them. Think Facebook. Think Google. Think TikTok. They don't destroy them. They don't ban them. They fund them. They shape them. They guide them. And then they capture them. And then they let you believe you're participating in a revolution. That's the bottom line. The Epstein files don't prove Bitcoin is a scam. They prove something arguably worse. That a technology explicitly designed to circumvent centralized power was, at its most critical developmental phase, quietly shaped, controlled, and captured by some of the most connected power brokers in modern history. Not through crude corruption, but through sophisticated infrastructure capture. The question is whether the infrastructure necessary for Bitcoin's success was systematically captured by networks antithetical to the technology's stated values. The documents released provide substantial evidence that it was. A Bitcoin enthusiast said the following: "It took 17 years to build a reputation with Bitcoin and one Epstein email release to destroy it." Patrick Riley, an IT analyst, said the following: "My faith in humanity will diminish with Bitcoin's rise or soar when it hits the floor. The ideas of decentralized, it being a store of value, it being sound money, etc., in regards to Bitcoin after release of the files are dead. Now there are only degenerates and immoral, greedy Ferengi left to support it. Every positive narrative of Bitcoin died with the release of the Epstein files." Remember, what did I say? Why is President Trump the best I can determine? Could it be that, it's all about legacy and he's been bamboozled into thinking that if all this information is released, it will adversely affect his legacy, not because of the kids with him, but because it would bring the system down? Well, if it's a malignant system, it would be a positive in your legacy that you did bring it down and you found a way to reconstruct that edifice, that building, only built on a solid foundation and not a foundation based on a swamp or the deep state or a bunch of degenerates or psychopaths. But it comes down, unfortunately, I believe, to the money, too. He knows that full release of the files will end crypto, will end Bitcoin, will end the conglomerate that he's been building and his sons have been building. And to give one further piece of evidence about that, the day after he praised Pam Bondi for her setting herself on fire in the worst congressional testimony, I believe, in our country's history, and there are a lot of bad ones. Breaking: President Trump's Truth Social Corporation has filed for 2 crypto exchange-traded funds with the SEC. There you go, folks. Rather than saying, Bondi, you're gone. Wiles, you're gone. Lutnick, you're gone. Anyone in this government, anyone in the private sector that was involved in criminal acts as exposed through the release of these files, you're going to be prosecuted. And whatever comes down, comes down. And if that means the end of crypto because it is a captured entity, it is not what it was designed to do because it was captured by the intelligence agencies, captured by its pedophile network. He's filing for more crypto involvement. Apparently, based on this, money trumps accountability and transparency. I don't see how you can look at it any other way. This isn't 5D chess, folks. This is greed. And this is also acting upon bad information about what really a legacy could be made upon. I thank you for joining me today. The only way we get through this is telling the truth. I know you don't like any of this that I just said. I get it. I don't like saying it. But someone has to. You know, when I was a physician and I got some bad test results on a patient, and that patient came into the office, I could do two things. I could walk in and tell the patient everything's fine, just ignore the results. Odds are if I did that, that patient would be dead in a box within 6 months. The other option is to sit down with that patient and tell them that the results were not good. But there are things we can do. There are things we can do to make things better. I refuse to go along with this, it'll all work out. It's all part of the plan. Let's look the other way. Let's not hold people accountable. No. The only way our constitutional republic survives this is holding people accountable that were involved in criminal activity, whatever they are. And the only way our constitutional republic progresses and gets back on its feet is not being so consumed with accumulating money that it gets in the way of us doing the right thing. Fact. I thank you for joining me today. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.